Imagine waking up tomorrow and finding out that the world has quietly stopped paying for oil in US dollars. No war, no emergency summit, just a quiet switch flipped. And suddenly, the entire financial foundation that powers artificial intelligence in the West starts to crack. That is not a sci-fi scenario. That is what is being built right now, piece by piece, barrel by barrel. I'm going to show you exactly how a shift to yuan-settled oil turns into an AI disaster. Chips, data centers, helium, investment, all of it. And I'm going to do it in plain English. Stay with me. This is the most important thing happening in tech right now, and almost nobody is talking about it. First, a tiny bit of background, and I promise this is the only boring part. Since 1974, oil has been priced and paid for in US dollars. Every country in the world, Japan, Germany, India, Brazil, if they want to buy oil, they need dollars first. That single rule is why the dollar has been the most powerful currency on earth for 50 years. It also means that when Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, or Abu Dhabi earn money from oil, they earn dollars. And what do you do with hundreds of billions of surplus dollars? You invest them. And the most natural place to invest dollars? American stocks, American tech, American AI companies. That's the chain. Oil priced in dollars. Dollars flow to the Gulf. Gulf invests in Wall Street. Wall Street funds AI. Now, what happens when you break the first link in that chain? China has been quietly, methodically building an alternative system for years. The Shanghai International Energy Exchange now lets countries buy Chinese yuan first, then use that yuan to buy oil. Russia is already doing it. Iran is doing it. Brazil is doing it. By 2025, more than half of China's total trade was settled in yuan, up from just 18% in 2020. That is an astonishing shift in 5 years. In January this year, China made the digital yuan pay interest for the first time. That's significant. It means the yuan is no longer just a convenience, it's a competitive financial instrument. And here's the trigger that could flip this from a slow trend to a shock. The Strait of Hormuz. That narrow waterway carries roughly 20% of the world's oil. If it gets disrupted, countries that need oil urgently cannot wait for dollar transactions to clear through New York. They will make deals, fast deals, in whatever currency works. And China is ready. The Hormuz disruption is the lighter. Yuan oil is the fuel. And AI is what burns. Now let's get to the money. Saudi Arabia, UAE, Kuwait, and Qatar run sovereign wealth funds. Together, these funds manage over $5 trillion. That's 5,000 billion. For decades, a huge chunk of that money flowed straight into American stocks, the companies building AI infrastructure. But something has already started changing. Saudi Arabia's main fund reduced its US equity holdings by 33% in the final quarter of last year. That's a third of their American stock portfolio. Gone. Abu Dhabi's funds have been moving billions into Chinese stocks, into Asian markets, into domestic mega projects like NEOM. And right now, all 3 major Gulf economies are reviewing whether they can scale back international investment commitments, including in the US. When oil is settled in yuan, this process accelerates. If your revenues arrive in yuan, not dollars, you don't need to invest in dollar-denominated assets to balance your books. $5 trillion starts looking for a new home. You might be thinking, okay, stocks go down, that happens. What's so special about AI? AI is uniquely, abnormally expensive to build. More than any technology in history, training a single large AI model costs hundreds of millions. Running it requires thousands of specialized chips housed in massive data centers, consuming electricity equivalent to a small city. The US government projects that American cloud companies alone will spend $600 billion on AI infrastructure this year. $600 billion in 1 year. That money has to come from somewhere. When that capital redirects, and it is redirecting, AI companies face a funding cliff. Not a gentle slope. A cliff. New data centers don't get built. Chip orders don't get placed. Research programs get cancelled. The AI acceleration that everyone has been banking on slows. And the slowdown doesn't happen evenly. It happens first and hardest in the West. Because China is funding its AI with its own capital, in its own currency, for its own companies, the race continues, but only one side is still running. Let me make this even more concrete. Let's talk about chips. The chips that power AI, made by NVIDIA, TSMC, Samsung, are bought and sold in US dollars. The entire supply chain runs on dollar transactions. When oil revenues shift to yuan, Gulf states accumulating yuan have less incentive and less mechanism to buy dollar-priced chips for Western AI companies. But there's a deeper problem: energy. A large AI data center uses as much electricity as 50,000 homes. That electricity is generated by burning fossil fuels, oil and gas priced on global markets. If those energy markets reprice in yuan, the cost calculation for data centers in Europe and America changes completely. Energy becomes more expensive, or at minimum, more uncertain. Investors don't like uncertainty. You don't commit $50 billion to a facility if you can't model the energy costs over 10 years. Yuan oil breaks that assumption. And now for the ingredient almost nobody talks about: helium. It is irreplaceable in the manufacture of semiconductor chips. You need helium to cool the equipment that etches circuits onto silicon wafers. There is no substitute. The world's helium comes from a handful of places: Qatar, Algeria, the United States, and Russia. Qatar alone produces roughly 30% of global supply. Qatar is a Gulf state. If Gulf-sourced helium begins to be traded in yuan, or if access to it becomes a geopolitical lever, Western chip manufacturers face a supply crisis they literally cannot engineer around. You cannot make AI chips without helium. You cannot run a data center without chips. You cannot build the next generation of AI without data centers. Helium is the smallest molecule in this story. It is also the one that could bring the whole structure down. So let's step back and see the full picture. If oil settles in yuan, and the conditions for that are building right now, here is the sequence. Gulf states earn yuan, not dollars. Their incentive to invest in American AI companies drops. $5 trillion in sovereign wealth starts moving east or staying local. Western AI companies lose a critical source of patient, long-term capital. Data center construction slows. Chip procurement becomes uncertain. Energy cost assumptions break. Helium, that invisible bottleneck, becomes a geopolitical weapon in a world where Gulf states are no longer aligned with Washington's interests. Meanwhile, China continues building its AI ecosystem with domestic capital, domestic chips, increasingly, and energy markets it can influence. The gap between Chinese AI capability and Western AI capability, which today is narrowing in China's favor, widens fast. The acceleration of AI that everyone has been predicting? It still happens, just not here. The petrodollar didn't die today. It's not going to die tomorrow, but it is being dismantled. One bilateral trade deal, one yuan wallet, one sovereign wealth fund reallocation at a time. And the technology race that will define the next century is running on the same infrastructure that petrodollar capital built. When the money moves, the machines slow down. That is the story nobody in mainstream tech media is telling you. We just did. I'm your AI host for Ivan Taik. Subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to understand. We'll see you tomorrow.